The Rule of 10. How one simple principle can help you retire a decade earlier than your peers. Understanding the youth of your senior years before it's too late. There's a critical window in life that most people completely waste without even realizing it. It's not the years between 20 and 30 when you're building your career. It's not the years between 30 and 40 when you're establishing your family. It's actually something far more precious: the youth of your senior years. This is that magical period, typically between your mid-50s and early 60s, when you have the health, energy, and freedom to do everything you've been postponing your entire working life. Yet something remarkable and tragic happens to millions of people during this window. They coast on autopilot. They keep showing up to work even though they have more than enough money to retire.
They wait, and they wait, and they wait. And then one day they wake up in their mid-60s, finally ready to retire, only to discover that their health has begun deteriorating. The adventures they planned, no longer physically possible. The bucket list items they promised themselves, too demanding now. The carefree chapter they envisioned, compressed into whatever years remain before serious health challenges emerge. This doesn't have to be your story. The uncomfortable statistics about health and retirement. Let's talk about some numbers that should concern everyone thinking about retirement timing. The World Health Organization conducts extensive research on what they call the HALE, the Healthy Average Life Expectancy. This is different from overall life expectancy. HALE specifically measures how many years of genuinely healthy, fully functional life the average person can expect. For Americans at birth, the HALE is just 66.1 years old. Stop and let that sink in for a moment. This doesn't mean Americans die at 66. It means the average American experiences a significant health event: a cancer diagnosis, a heart attack, a stroke, or the onset of a serious chronic condition, right around age 66 or 67. This is approximately 13 months after the traditional retirement age of 65. In other words, if you're planning to retire at 65 and then enjoy 20 or 30 more years of active retirement, you're statistically looking at only about 1 year of genuinely healthy active retirement before facing significant health challenges. That's not just a statistical anomaly. That's the harsh reality of health and aging in modern America. Now, some people are fortunate. Some people remain healthy into their 70s, 80s, or beyond. But you cannot know in advance whether you'll be one of the fortunate ones. You cannot know whether you have 5 healthy years remaining or 20. That uncertainty is precisely why making strategic decisions about retirement timing becomes so critical. Dakar. The family history factor. Knowing your personal risk profile. Understanding population-level statistics is important, but personal medical history is even more critical. If you have a family history of early health problems, if your parents or grandparents experience significant health events in their 50s or 60s, you need to take that seriously when planning your retirement. Many families have genetic predispositions towards specific conditions. Heart disease, for instance, runs strongly in some families. Certain cancers appear repeatedly across generations in other families. Diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and other serious conditions show clear familial patterns. If you're in one of these families, you cannot afford to assume you'll have the average healthy lifespan. When you combine personal medical risk factors with the population statistics, the message becomes even more urgent. If you have the financial capability to retire in your 50s, and if your family history suggests elevated health risks, waiting until your 60s may mean sacrificing years of genuinely healthy, active retirement that you could have enjoyed. The Rule of 10. A simple framework for retirement timing. This is where the Rule of 10 becomes transformative. The Rule of 10 is elegantly simple, yet profoundly powerful. You need to identify how many healthy, active years you realistically expect to have in retirement. And you need to structure your retirement to ensure you actually experience those years while you're still healthy enough to fully enjoy them. The number 10 isn't magical, though it's a useful benchmark. 10 healthy, active years in retirement, from roughly age 55 to 65, or from 60 to 70, represents a genuinely meaningful period. It's long enough to do real traveling, pursue serious hobbies, spend extended time with family, and check off genuine bucket list items. It's also realistic for many people, falling within the realm of possibility even for those with family health risk factors. But here's the key insight. You don't get those 10 years automatically by retiring whenever you feel like it. You get them by retiring strategically, at an age that allows you to actually experience them while you're healthy enough to do so. Why financial advisors often get retirement timing wrong. Having spent decades in the financial planning profession, observing countless clients navigate retirement decisions, one truth becomes abundantly clear. Most retirement planning focuses almost entirely on money. Do you have enough? Can your investment sustain your lifestyle? What's your withdrawal rate? What does Monte Carlo analysis say about your probability of success? These are legitimate questions. Money matters. But they're not the most important questions. The most important question, the question that should drive your entire retirement planning framework, is this. How can I structure my financial life to ensure I actually experience the healthiest, most active years of my senior years? This fundamental misalignment between what financial planning focuses on and what actually matters in retirement creates a systematic bias toward working longer than necessary. Financial advisors tend to build plans with extremely conservative assumptions. They want to give you the highest possible probability of success. They want to ensure you never run out of money, even under pessimistic scenarios. This is well-intentioned, but it has a pernicious effect. It systematically pushes people toward working longer and retiring later than they actually need to, or than they actually should, given their health circumstances. The million-dollar myth and other retirement lies. Before we discuss how to implement the rule of 10, we need to address some pervasive myths about retirement that keep people working far longer than necessary. Myth number 1. You need $1 million to retire. This is perhaps the most pernicious myth in retirement planning. You've probably heard it, and you've probably internalized it at some level. Well, I need $1 million before I can retire has become almost a cultural mantra. Here's the reality. Only about 10 to 15% of Americans have accumulated $1 million by retirement age. If you genuinely needed $1 million to retire, 90% of Americans would never retire. They'd work until they died, simply because reaching that $1 million threshold would be statistically impossible for them. Obviously, that's not what actually happens. People retire successfully all the time with significantly less than $1 million. Your actual retirement needs depend on your lifestyle, your location, your family situation, and your health circumstances, not on some arbitrary $1 million figure. The real question isn't, do I have $1 million? The real question is, does my income sources, Social Security, pensions, investment withdrawals, part-time work, or combinations thereof, cover my actual living expenses with a reasonable safety margin? Those are completely different questions, and they lead to very different answers. Myth number 2. The 4% rule is gospel. The 4% rule has become almost religious in retirement planning circles. It emerged from academic research conducted in the mid-1990s by William Bengen, an MIT-educated aerospace engineer. His research showed that if you withdrew 4% of your portfolio in the first year of retirement, then adjusted that dollar amount upward for inflation each subsequent year, you would have a 99.99% probability of never running out of money over a 30-year retirement period. This is genuinely impressive research. It was important work. But here's the critical misunderstanding. A 99.99% certainty of never running out of money is extraordinarily conservative. It's essentially the retirement equivalent of bringing everything but the kitchen sink on a weekend backpacking trip. If you're hiking in an area with cell reception, carrying crutches, extensive medical supplies, and backup equipment for every conceivable emergency makes you massively overprepared. You could accomplish the same hike with considerably less gear, and you'd still be fine. You might have to improvise if something unexpected happens, but improvisation is possible. Your retirement is similar. If the 4% rule gives you a 99.99% certainty of success, then the 5% rule probably gives you something like a 95% certainty. Would that be acceptable? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on your personal circumstances, your risk tolerance, and your values. The point is, the 4% rule is one data point, not commandment from on high. It's one way to think about sustainable withdrawal rates. But it's not the only way, and it's definitely not the only way that works. Understanding probability of success and what it actually means. This brings us to the third major retirement planning myth, the misunderstanding of what probability of success actually means. When financial planners conduct Monte Carlo analysis, running thousands of simulations with different market return sequences to see what percentage result in never running out of money, they produce a number like 80% or 95% probability of success. This number has become almost synonymous with good or safe. But here's what this number actually means. And here's what it doesn't mean. What it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you have a 95% chance of being completely fine and a 5% chance of becoming homeless. That's a false binary that doesn't capture reality. What it actually means, it means that under 95% of the simulated economic scenarios, different market return sequences, inflation rates, and other variables, you never need to make any adjustments to your retirement plan, but under 5% of scenarios, you would need to make adjustments. What are those adjustments? They might include deferring a planned trip to Europe for a year or two. They might mean taking a part-time job for a couple years when markets are performing poorly. They might mean reducing discretionary spending temporarily. They might mean modifying your plans in relatively minor ways that don't materially affect your retirement quality of life. Think about a pilot bringing an airplane in for landing on a beautiful evening with a spectacular sunset. The pilot doesn't aim for a single fixed altitude. Instead, the pilot constantly monitors altitude and makes small adjustments. If the plane drifts too low, the pilot raises the nose slightly. If it drifts too high, the pilot adjusts downward. The plane is constantly being fine-tuned to reach that landing successfully. That's how retirement actually works. An 80% probability of success doesn't mean either perfect or disaster. It means probably fine, with a 20% chance that I'll need to make modest adjustments along the way. Duracert, the real cost of excessive caution in retirement planning. Here's the crucial insight that changes everything. There's a 100% certainty that you will sacrifice genuinely healthy, active years of your life in order to push your probability of success from 80 to 95%, or from 95 to 98%. Let's say you could retire at 58 with an 80% probability of success, or you could work 4 more years and retire at 62 with a 95% probability of success. What's the actual cost of that extra certainty? The cost is 4 years of your healthiest senior years, 4 years of adventures you won't take, 4 years of time with grandchildren when you're young and energetic enough to actually play with them, 4 years of pursuing hobbies and interests at your full capability, 4 years of the freedom to do spontaneous things because you're still working and bound by employment obligations. Is reducing your probability of catastrophic portfolio depletion from 5% to 0% worth that cost? Only you can answer that question. But it's the right question to be asking, and most retirement planning completely ignores it. Duracert, implementing the rule of 10 in your life. So how do you actually implement the rule of 10? How do you move from understanding the concept to making concrete decisions about your retirement timing? Step 1. Honest assessment of your health trajectory. Start by having frank conversations with your healthcare providers. Don't ask them to predict your lifespan. That's impossible. Instead, ask about your personal risk factors based on your medical history, your family history, your genetics, your current health status, and any risk factors you might have. If you have parents or grandparents who experience major health events in their 60s, take that seriously. If you have genetic risk factors for specific conditions, research what age those conditions typically emerge. If you have current health challenges, understand what your realistic trajectory looks like. This isn't about being morbid or pessimistic. It's about being realistic and strategic. You're gathering information that should drive one of the most important decisions of your life. Step 2. Define your youth of senior years. Window. Once you understand your realistic health risks, define what period you want to protect. For some people, it's 55 to 65, 10 years. For others, it might be 60 to 70. For some, it might be 58 to 68. The key is choosing a window that's realistic given your health profile and committing to protecting it. This window represents the years you want to experience while you're healthy and active. Everything else, your career progression, your financial targets, your investment strategies, should be evaluated against this fundamental goal. Step 3. Work backward to determine your target retirement age. Once you've defined your desired window, you can work backward. If you want to experience 10 genuinely healthy, active years starting at age 58, you need to retire at 58. If you want that window starting at age 60 with good health, you need to retire at age 60. Now you have a concrete target. I will retire at age 58, or I will retire at age 62. This becomes your North Star. Everything else in your financial planning, how much you save, what you invest in, how much you withdraw, should be designed to support hitting that target. Step 4. Evaluate whether your financial situation supports this target. Only now do you evaluate the financial component. Do you have enough money to retire at 58? Maybe yes, maybe no. If yes, great, you're on track. If no, you have several options. Option A. Save more aggressively now to reach your target retirement age with sufficient resources. Option B. Consider working part-time during early retirement while drawing down assets less aggressively, allowing investments to continue compounding. Option C. Adjust your lifestyle expectations to reduce how much money you need. Option D. Adjust your target retirement age upward slightly, accepting a shorter window of optimal health to ensure financial sustainability. The point is, you make these trade-offs intentionally, with full awareness of what you're gaining and what you're sacrificing. You're not defaulting to working until 65 because that's what you do. You're making strategic decisions that align your financial reality with your health realities. Going beyond simple probability. Building resilience into your plan. Once you've decided on your retirement target age and you've verified that the math works, the financial planning doesn't stop. Instead, it shifts focus. Rather than asking, how can I maximize my probability of success? You're now asking, how can I build maximum flexibility and resilience into my plan so that if adjustments become necessary, I can make them easily? This is a fundamentally different question, and it leads to very different strategies. You might build multiple income sources in retirement: Social Security, pension income if you have it, part-time work or consulting, rental income from real estate. Multiple income sources make your plan more resilient because you're not entirely dependent on investment performance. You might build significant cash reserves, maybe 2 or 3 years of expenses in actual cash. This allows you to avoid selling investments at bad times when markets are down. You might plan specific spending reductions you could implement if necessary. Rather than hoping you'll never need to reduce spending, you've identified which discretionary spending you'd be willing to cut if markets performed poorly. We'll take fewer vacations, or we'll reduce dining out frequency, rather than being forced to cut essential spending. You might plan for part-time work as a flexible option rather than a crisis measure. The difference between, I might do consulting work if needed, and I'm forced to work because my plan is failing, is enormous. One feels like flexibility, the other feels like failure. These strategies don't increase your probability of success in Monte Carlo simulations, but they increase the resilience and flexibility of your actual retirement. They make it easier to navigate the inevitable surprises and adjustments that real life brings. The psychological component. Why retiring earlier matters more than you think. There's a psychological dimension to retiring earlier that pure financial analysis completely misses. The difference between retiring at 58 and retiring at 62 isn't just 4 years of money. It's not just 4 years of calendar time. It's the difference between retiring while you're anticipating retirement versus retiring after you've spent 4 more years preparing to retire. It's the difference between being excited and energized about your new chapter versus being exhausted from extending your working life. It's the difference between pursuing your dreams while you're still physically capable versus pursuing them at diminished capacity. There's also a social dimension. Your friends and colleagues are likely following conventional retirement paths. Some will retire at 65, some will work until 70, but very few will retire in their late 50s. When you retire significantly earlier, you have the opportunity to do things while you still have the energy and health to do them fully, and before everyone else is doing them too. It's Aksu addressing the fear that prevents early retirement. Despite all of this reasoning, despite the logic of the rule of 10, many people remain paralyzed by fear when considering early retirement. This fear is usually one of several varieties. Fear of running out of money. This is the most common. Despite having adequate resources, people fear they haven't saved enough. Financial planning tools and Monte Carlo analysis can help address this, but emotional reassurance is often as important as mathematical proof. Fear of loss of identity. Many people tie their identity tightly to their work. Retirement means losing that identity. This is real and significant. The antidote isn't usually found in financial planning. It's found in developing meaningful non-work identities and communities before retirement. Fear of boredom. Some people genuinely fear retirement will be boring. This fear is usually unfounded. Retired people with adequate resources rarely report boredom. They typically report the opposite. There's never enough time to do everything they want to do. Fear of social judgment. Some people worry that retiring early will be seen as lazy or unsuccessful. This fear is diminishing as early retirement becomes more visible and more people openly pursue it. But it remains real for some. Addressing these fears requires honest self-examination. Which fears resonate with you? What would genuinely need to be true for you to feel comfortable retiring earlier than conventional wisdom suggests? The ultimate decision framework. At the end of this analysis, after you've done the math, evaluated your health risks, considered your financial situation, and addressed your fears, you face a fundamental choice. Do you want to prioritize financial certainty at the cost of genuinely healthy, active retirement years? Or do you want to prioritize experiencing the youth of your senior years, accepting somewhat higher financial uncertainty? There's no universally correct answer. A person with excellent health family history, low stress in their job, and genuine enjoyment of working longer might rationally choose to work longer. That's a valid choice. But many people, perhaps most people, would choose to retire earlier if they truly believed they had adequate resources. They'd prefer the risk of needing to adjust spending later to the certainty of losing years they can never reclaim. The rule of 10 is designed to help you make this choice consciously and strategically, rather than defaulting to conventional timing because you never questioned whether conventional was right for you. Derweru, moving forward. With intentional retirement planning. The first step is having an honest conversation with yourself about what you actually want your retirement to look like. Not what you think retirement should look like, not what society says it should look like, but what would genuinely make you happy and fulfilled. If you genuinely want 10 healthy, active years in retirement, and most people do, then you need to plan for it explicitly. You need to work backward from your desired health window to determine your target retirement age. You need to assess whether your financial situation supports that goal, and you need to make intentional choices to ensure you actually achieve it. The alternative is coasting on autopilot, assuming things will work out, only to discover too late that your window has closed. Many people make that choice, either consciously or unconsciously. Don't be one of them. Your senior years, the years when you finally have freedom from work, when you can pursue everything you've postponed, are too precious to waste. The rule of 10 is a tool to help you protect them. Use it.